The monster in the cage. The base on the dark side of Jupiter was cold, quiet, and full of secrets. No sunlight ever touched it. No one outside Earth Command even knew it existed. Only the bravest soldiers were sent there, and even they were warned to never open the door at the end of Hall C. Lieutenant Kai was new, young, curious, and smarter than most. He followed orders, but he always asked, why? And in this place, that was dangerous. One night, as cold wind moved through the metal halls, Kai heard something strange. It was not a machine, not the buzz of lights. It was a sound, a soft cry, like someone was in pain. Kai followed the sound. It led him down Hall C, the one place everyone said to stay away from. At the end was a giant black door, locked with red lights and warnings. On the wall, painted in bold letters, were the words, "Danger, alien beast, do not approach." He paused. His heart beat faster. The cry came again. It was not loud, not angry, just sad. Kai stepped closer. He pressed his hand to the scanner, even though he knew it wouldn't work. But to his surprise, the red lights blinked, then turned green. Access granted. The door opened with a hiss. Inside was darkness. Then a soft purple light turned on, showing a large cage in the middle of the room. The metal bars were thick, like prison walls. And behind them, something moved. Kai stepped forward slowly. He expected a monster, something with teeth and claws. But what he saw stopped him. It was a girl, not fully human. Her skin had a silver glow, and her eyes were like stars, deep and bright. Her arms were marked with scars. Chains held her wrists and ankles. Her long black hair covered half her face. She looked weak, tired, broken. When she saw him, she didn't roar or growl. She whispered in a soft voice, "Help." Kai blinked. "You speak English?" She nodded, slowly. "Little. Help, please." He looked around. "They said you're dangerous, that you'll kill us." She shook her head. "I'm not beast. I'm Rinka." "Rinka," he repeated. "What are you?" She looked down. "Prisoner. Trophy. I tried to escape. They caught me." Kai took a step back. His training told him to leave, to report this, but something in her voice, in her eyes, made him stay. "I don't understand," he said. "Why would they keep you here?" Rinka lifted her chained hands. "Because I'm different. Because they're afraid." Kai walked closer to the cage. He saw her injuries, the dry blood, the pain in her eyes. "I can't open this," he said. "I don't even have the key." She looked up. "You can. Try. Panel. There." Kai moved to the control panel on the wall. It had strange symbols and a blinking light. He pressed a few buttons. The screen turned red. War and Eng. KGUNOCK in Piro Jurius. Suddenly, alarms rang out, loud and sharp. INTURUDER 8LEORT. Hall C. Unauthorized access. Kai froze. Footsteps echoed outside the hallway. He looked back at Rinka. She stared at him, calm but sad. "You have to go," she said. But he didn't move. The door behind him was closing. Soon, he'd be trapped inside. The guards were coming. He could run and save himself, or unlock the cage. His hand hovered over the final button. One choice, 1 second. He pressed it. With a loud clang, the cage door slid open. Rinka stepped out, weak but standing tall. Her chains fell to the ground. "You freed me," she whispered. "Yeah," Kai said. "Now let's get out of here." The lights flickered. A loud voice came over the speakers. "Lieutenant Kai, step away from the prisoner, or you will be shot." Rinka turned to him. "They won't stop. Not until we're both dead." Kai looked into her eyes and saw not a monster, but a soul. A fighter, and maybe even a friend. He grabbed her hand. Then let them try. The escape the chi changes the EVE writing. The room was shaking. Red lights flashed across the walls like angry eyes. Sirens screamed louder than thunder. Footsteps pounded closer. The soldiers were coming, and they were coming fast. Kai had only seconds to think. He held Rinka's arm tightly. Her body was cold and weak, but her eyes still burned with silent fire. "Can you run?" he asked. "I will try," she said softly. They moved fast, out of the cage, through the hallway, and into the shadows. Rinka limped beside him, her legs barely holding her up after days, or maybe weeks, of being locked up. Still, she did not fall. Every few seconds, a voice echoed from the speakers overhead. "Lieutenant Kai, stand down. You have betrayed your duty. The alien is dangerous. Do not trust her. We are authorized to use deadly force." But Kai didn't listen. He had seen the pain in her eyes. She wasn't the beast they had warned him about. She was scared, hurt, alone. And most of all, she had called him Lifebender. He didn't know what that meant yet, but somehow it felt important. They ducked into a dark corridor. Kai knew the base inside and out. He had spent weeks learning every tunnel, every blind spot. He took her down a vent shaft behind the mess hall, crawling quietly, even as guards searched with guns and flashlights. Rinka winced with every move, but she stayed quiet. She was stronger than she looked. "Almost there," Kai whispered. After 20 minutes of crawling and hiding, they reached the hangar. There it was, a small stealth pod. Fast, silent, meant for high-risk missions, one of the few ships in the base that could fly without being tracked. Kai opened the hatch. "Inside," he said. Rinka looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" He paused, then said, "Because I believe you." She nodded once, then climbed into the ship. He followed. As soon as they sat down, he hit the launch button. Outside, alarms screamed louder. The guards were racing toward them. A voice shouted, "Stop that ship." Too late. The pod shot into the black sky, leaving the base and Jupiter's cold shadow behind. It disappeared into space like a whisper in the wind. Inside the ship, everything went quiet. Just the hum of the engine, the soft blue lights, and the sound of two hearts beating. Kai turned to Rinka. She was breathing fast, clutching her side. "You're bleeding," he said. "I need rest," she replied, her voice thin. "Not much time." He guided the ship to a secret asteroid cave he had found during a training flight, a place no radar could reach. Hidden. Safe. Once inside, he wrapped her wounds with the ship's medical kit. Her blood was dark blue, thick like honey. She hissed in pain, but never screamed. As he worked, she studied him. "You are not like others," she said. "What do you mean?" he asked. "They fear me. They hate me. You don't." He nodded slowly. "I saw your eyes. You weren't angry. You were lost." She blinked, then said something in her own language, soft and strange. "What did you say?" "It means, you are Lifebender. You said that before. What does it mean?" She touched his chest, right over his heart. "You saved me. Not just body. My spirit, too. Lifebender is one who links with another soul." Kai frowned. "Like a friend." Rinka shook her head. "More." Kai didn't understand, but the way she said it made something warm move in his chest. He helped her lay down on the pod's floor mat. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. "I will protect you," he said softly. She didn't answer, but a small smile touched her lips. He sat beside her, holding a plasma pistol tightly in his hand. But just as he started to relax, a strange red light blinked on the ship's control screen. "Incoming Signal. Unidentified craft DETCTED." Kai jumped to his feet. He scanned the radar. A large shadow was heading toward the asteroid cave. No ID, no flag, just pure black metal and a glowing red eye at the center of its hull. Then a message came through. Return the beast, or you both die. Kay's heart pounded. Rinka opened her eyes. She had felt the danger even in her sleep. Who is it? He asked. She looked at the screen. Her face went pale. The hunter. Friend of yours? No, she whispered. He is my cage, given a name. Hunter and hunted. The black ship hovered outside the asteroid cave like a shadow with eyes. It made no sound. No radio call. No warning shots. Just that message, cold and final. Return the beast, or you both die. Inside the small pod, Kai stood in front of Rinka, holding his plasma pistol tightly. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. That ship outside, it wasn't a normal patrol craft. It was something worse. A bounty hunter's ship, not just any hunter, her hunter. Rinka sat up slowly, her face pale. Her glowing eyes looked out the small window at the massive ship outside. Kai turned to her. Who is he? She closed her eyes and whispered, They call him Vorak. I call him the cage with a heartbeat. Kay's grip on his pistol tightened. You've fought him before. I ran, she said. He always follows. He doesn't take payment. He collects. Creatures. People. Souls. Kai felt a chill. Why you? I'm rare. My kind was almost wiped out. They say I'm the last of my blood. And he wants to own that. Before Kai could speak again, a loud metallic bang shook the pod. The cave echoed like thunder. Boom. They both stumbled. He's trying to break in, Kai said. No, Rinka said, standing up slowly. He's warning us. Another message flashed on the screen. 1 hour. Then I take her by force. Preparing for war. Kai paced the pod. His mind raced. 1 hour. No backup. No army. Just a damaged alien girl and a human with a gun. He checked the pod's systems. Shields were low. Ammo limited. Escape was possible, but even if we fly, he said, he'll chase us. Rinka nodded. He never stops. Then we fight. Rinka looked at him, surprised. You would fight a hunter, for me. Kai nodded. You protected me back in the base. Now it's my turn. She stared at him, silent for a long moment. Then she said softly, You are Lifebender, truly. I still don't fully get what that means. She walked over to him. Her steps were slow, but her strength was returning. My people don't choose bonds lightly. It's not just a feeling. It's fate. Soul to soul. Kai didn't speak. But he didn't need to. Their eyes locked, and in that silence, something passed between them, like a string of light connecting two hearts. Rinka moved to the wall and pulled out a hidden box behind a panel. Inside were small silver devices and a long staff, glowing with blue fire. This was mine, she said, before they took me. She handed Kai one of the silver discs. What's this? Stick it to your chest. It protects. Kai placed the disc under his shirt. It grew warm, fused to his skin. He felt lighter, faster. A strange hum filled the air. Rinka spun her staff once, and the air shifted around her. For the first time, Kai saw her stand tall, not weak, not scared, but like a warrior. The fight begins. Exactly 1 hour later, the cave wall exploded. The blast sent dust and fire flying in every direction, and out of the smoke came Vorak. He was not human or alien. He was something in between. 10 feet tall, skin like metal. A mask with no eyes, just red light shining through the cracks. He walked through the fire like it was wind. Rinka stepped in front of Kai. Hello again, beast, Vorak said in a voice that felt like knives on steel. And you brought a pet. Kai raised his gun. Back off. Vorak laughed. He raised one hand and fired a shockwave that sent Kai flying into the wall. Rinka screamed and attacked, staff spinning, blue light slicing through the air. Her first strike hit Vorak hard, sending sparks flying. But he barely flinched. "Still strong," he said. "But you are mine." She shouted in her native tongue and struck again, harder. Kai got up, blood dripping from his lip. He aimed and shot at Vorak's back, but the hunter turned and blocked the blast with his metal arm. "Human," he growled, "you are nothing." "I'm her lifebender," Kai said, "and I'm not afraid." They fought together. Rinka's staff and Kai's gun. Dodge. Strike. Block. Fire. The cave burned with light. But Vorak was too strong. Too fast. Then, he grabbed Rinka and slammed her into the ground. She screamed. "No," Kai shouted and ran forward. Vorak turned and raised his blade. Just as he swung it down, Kai jumped between them. The blade struck his chest, but instead of cutting him, it shattered. The silver disc on his chest glowed bright, sending a shockwave through the cave. Vorak flew back, crashing into the wall. Kai gasped, falling to his knees. Rinka crawled to him. You used the bond shield." Kai blinked. "I didn't know what I was doing." She touched his face. "You protected me." Again. The escape. Vorak wasn't dead, but he was wounded, badly. Sparks flew from his mask. His voice turned to static. "I will return." He vanished into the shadows, escaping through the burning hole in the cave. Rinka and Kai looked at each other. They had survived. But war was coming. They both knew it. Kai coughed and sat down beside her. "You okay?" "I will be." He smiled. "Good, because next time, we go after him." She looked at him. "You'd go to war for me?" Kai nodded. "You're not a beast. You're my mate now." She stared at him, shocked, then smiled. "Then let's make the galaxy remember who we are." The Boendi is forever. The cave was quiet now. Smoke still hung in the air. Dust floated slowly like snow. The walls were cracked. The ground was scorched. And yet, in that broken place, something beautiful was being built. Not from metal, not from machines, but from a bond, one that no hunter, no army, no galaxy could break. Kai sat with his back against the cave wall, his shirt torn and his breathing slow. His hand rested on a glowing disc fused to his chest, the one that had saved his life, the same one that had somehow connected him to Rinka forever. Rinka sat beside him, quiet and still. Her staff lay at her side. Her skin glowed softly in the darkness, silver light dancing across her face. Her eyes, once cold and distant, were now open, searching. For the first time, she looked not like a beast, not like a weapon, but like a soul, deep, ancient, and broken in places no one could see. Kai looked at her and whispered, "Why do I feel different?" Rinka didn't answer right away. Then she slowly placed her hand over his. When two life-benders share battle, share blood, and share heart, something changes. Forever. Kai nodded. "So this bond, it's not just words." She looked into his eyes. "It is everything. Something any do you begins." Later that night, as stars shined through the broken ceiling of the cave, Kai started to notice strange things. He was hearing whispers, but they weren't from outside. They were from inside his mind. Soft words, images, emotions that weren't his. He turned to Rinka, confused. "Did you say something?" She shook her head gently. "Then what?" He paused. "Wait. Did you think something? About a forest?" She blinked. "Yes, my home. I saw it. I saw green trees, and tall cliffs, and a blue moon." Rinka leaned closer. You are hearing my mind. Kai touched his head. How? Why? The bond is stronger now. We are life vendors. Our thoughts begin to cross. Our feelings too. Kai was quiet. Is this going to keep getting stronger? Yes, she said, until you are not two, but one. He looked down, unsure. Is that what you want? She didn't speak for a long moment. Then softly. I didn't want it at first. I didn't want to trust a human. But now, I feel your heart when I close my eyes. And that scares me. Kai gave a small smile. I'm scared too. And yet, they didn't move away. They sat closer, hearts beating slow and steady, sensing in quiet rhythm. Messages from the outside. Suddenly, a loud beeping filled the cave. The pod's console had picked up a message. Kai ran over and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, blue and shaky. It was a high commander from Earth Command. Lieutenant Kai, this is Command Base 6. You are being charged with treason, aiding an alien fugitive, and theft of military property. Return immediately or face termination. Kai sighed. They found us. Renka stood behind him. What will you do? He turned off the message. I choose you. She looked surprised. Even if they hunt you. I've already been hunted. I'd rather run with you than hide from the truth. Renka stepped forward. She touched his shoulder, then his face. Her fingers traced the side of his jaw, like a map she was still learning. I never thought I'd say this to a human, she whispered. But you feel like home. Kay's throat tightened. No words came, just the silence that happens when hearts speak louder than mouths. The Boendi is TSD'd. That night, Kai had a dream. He stood in the middle of a burning forest. Trees were on fire. Smoke filled the sky. Screams echoed through the woods. And there, at the center, was Rinka. She was chained again, bleeding, calling his name. He ran to her, but fire blocked his path. No, he screamed. I'm coming. Suddenly, a giant hand reached from the flames. It wasn't Vorik. It was himself. His face, his hand, his voice. You cannot protect her, the other Kai said. You are weak. He woke with a gasp. Sweat on his forehead. Renka was already beside him, her hand on his chest. I felt it, she said. You dreamed of the burning. Kai shook. It felt real. It was your fear, she whispered. And now it is mine too. He sat up. Can this bond break us? It can, she said, if we let fear grow stronger than trust. Kai stared into her eyes. Then I choose trust. And in that moment, something shifted inside him. A new kind of strength. Not the strength of muscle or guns, but the kind that comes from knowing someone would die for you, and that you would die for them. The mark of DHE mate. Later, as they repaired the pod, Kai saw something on his skin, just below the glowing disc. A symbol, like a flame inside a circle. Renka saw it too. Her eyes widened. It's the mark, she whispered. What does it mean? You are my mate now. Kai froze. Is that permanent? Renka nodded. It cannot be removed. It is ancient, sacred, a vow without words. Kai stared at it. It didn't hurt, but it felt heavy, like wearing someone's soul. I didn't ask for this, he said quietly. I know, Renka said, but neither did I. They looked at each other, not with anger, but with truth. And slowly, Kai smiled. Then maybe fate chose right. She smiled too. And together, they stepped outside the cave, looking up at the stars. No longer just two lost lives in a galaxy of war, but one bond, one path, forever. Queen of beasts, Heir of fire. The stars above them were quiet, but the galaxy was not. Across systems, across moons, and across news channels on every human station, A single sentence was being repeated over and over again. Human soldier bonds with alien beast, declares her his mate. Photos of Kai and Rinka were everywhere, some real, some faked. But the message was always the same. He had betrayed his kind. For her. In some places, people cheered. In others, they demanded blood. And in the cold, quiet corners of space, war machines began to move. But for now, on a jungle-covered planet hidden deep in the nebula rim, Kai and Rinka were still breathing, still surviving, still together. The planet of HFY Sci-Fi. They had landed on a forgotten world. No cities, no towers, only green trees and misty skies. The air was warm, the nights cold. Strange birds sang songs with no melody. The rivers glowed in the dark. Here they could hide, but they could not rest. Kai trained every day. He ran through the jungle. He learned to fight with Rinka's staff. He learned to feel the wind before it changed, to listen before he spoke, to think before he moved. And Rinka watched, not as a teacher, not as a queen, but as a partner, a bondmate, someone who could feel his breath without hearing it, and feel his fear before he said a word. But not all days were good. The dark MESSAG. One morning, as fog rolled across the forest, a signal came through their hidden pod. A voice, deep, cold, human. Lieutenant Kai, you are ordered to report to command. You have one final chance. If you do not surrender, your family will suffer. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Kai froze. His hands shook. He hadn't thought about Earth in days, maybe weeks. But now, his parents, his little sister, they were in danger. And it was all because of him. Rinka saw his fear before he spoke. What is it? She asked. He told her everything. She listened, silent, still. Then she said, they will use your heart against you. That is the human way. Kai looked up. We have to do something. No, she said, we do nothing. I will go. He blinked. What? No. If I surrender, she said, they will leave your family alone. Kai stood, angry. And what happens to you? She turned away. I was born in chains. I will return if it means you live. Kai grabbed her hand. No, not again. No more cages. But she pulled her hand away. I can't let you be hunted forever, she said. He stared at her, hurt, angry, scared. I didn't choose this bond to lose you, he whispered. And I didn't survive death to watch you suffer, she replied. Silent, goo would be why. The next morning, she was gone. No note. No words. Just her staff left behind, placed gently where Kai always sat by the river. He held it like a memory and shouted her name into the forest until his voice broke. But she didn't return. Not that day. Not the next. Not the next week. The fire within. Kai sat alone in the jungle, heart heavy, rage burning like lava. And then something changed. He started to feel it, like a whisper at the edge of his soul. Pain. Chains. Tears. He stood up. His mark on the chest glowed red hot. Rinka, he said, I can feel you. Somewhere, she was hurting. And suddenly, everything became clear. She had tried to protect him by leaving. Now it was his turn. He wouldn't wait. He wouldn't hide. He would find her. And this time, not as a soldier, not as a human, but as her mate. The return of the HFY. Kai found an old rebel base hidden inside the jungle cliffs. He sent a signal, a call for help. To his surprise, someone answered. A group of Rinka's people, thought to be extinct, came forward. Tall like her, scared like her, but alive. We saw the message, one said. We saw her chained again. Kai bowed. I need your help to save your queen. They stared at him, at the human who carried her mark. One stepped forward. You are her lifebender. Then we are your sword. The beginning of war. On a cold gray prison station orbiting Earth, Rinka was chained once again. But she was not crying. She was waiting. Because deep in her soul, she could feel something. It was coming. Closer. Brighter. Stronger. Kai. Her mate. Her fire. Her lifebender. And when the alarms rang out and the walls shook, she smiled. You came. They war they didn't. The Earth Command prison station hung above the planet like a knife waiting to drop. Gray, sharp, and cold, it circled silently, hidden behind Earth's shadow. No windows, no color, only walls thick enough to bury a scream. Inside, Rinka sat in the center of a glowing white room, chained at the wrists, ankles, neck, energy cuffs pulsing with red light. Her eyes were closed, her head lowered. But she wasn't asleep. She was listening. Not with ears, with the bond. She could feel him, Kai, coming closer, burning brighter, each heartbeat stronger than the last. And with every pulse, the red cuffs on her body flickered. She smiled. The air of the HFY Storm, high above the station, in a stolen Earth fighter ship, Kai sat in the pilot's seat, flanked by 3 massive ships shaped like knives of bone and crystal. The rebels, Rinka's people, had come, just like they promised. Kai was no longer just a soldier. He was a leader, a mate, a symbol. Drop on my signal, he said into the mic. Earth Command will fire, the rebel next to him warned. Kai narrowed his eyes. Then we give them something they don't expect. The signal was sent, and from the blackness of space, the fire began. 3 ships dropped smoke bombs across the orbit path, hiding their movement. The stolen fighters zipped between radar lines, using blind spots Kai had memorized during his training. Earth's defenses fired back. Lasers, rockets, drones. But Kai didn't blink. He flew straight into the storm. His heart wasn't afraid, because he could feel her. Inside THE prison, guards ran through the metal halls, yelling into radios. Breach in Sector 9. Unknown ships on radar. Protect the prisoner. But it was already too late. Kai's ship crashed through the outer shell like a spear. He jumped out before it even stopped moving, landing with a roll plasma gun in one hand, Rinka's staff in the other. The guards didn't even have time to aim. He moved like lightning. Faster, sharper, like he wasn't human anymore. The bond had changed him. The door to the white chamber stood in front of him, sealed, protected. He slammed the staff into the wall. Boom. The lock exploded. Smoke filled the hallway. And there she was. OIFEBINDRS reunited. Rinka looked up as Kai stepped through the smoke, shadows and fire behind him. Her eyes filled with light. His chest glowed with the bond mark. He stepped forward and placed the staff down beside her. I came, he whispered. I knew you would, she replied. He broke the cuffs with the staff's edge. One by one. The final one, the neck lock, snapped. She fell into his arms, but there was no time to breathe. The face of betrayal. From the control tower above, a new voice echoed through the speakers. A woman's voice. Cold. Sharp. Well done, Lieutenant Kai. Or should I say, traitor. Kai looked up, confused. The screen above flickered. And there she was. Commander Elin Merrick, Kai's former mentor. The woman who trained him. The woman who had called him son more than once. You knew, Kai said aloud. She nodded slowly. We watched you from the moment you touched her cage. You thought you were saving her, but you were leading us to the others. Kai froze. Rinka growled. You used him. Yes, Merrick said calmly. And now we'll take the Queen, her army, and your bond. We'll study it, weaponize it, make more. Rinka's eyes flashed. You don't understand it. I don't need to, Merrick said. I only need to own it. The choice. All across the prison, Earth soldiers flooded in. The rebels outside had broken through the outer ring, but were getting crushed by Earth's firepower. Inside, Kai and Rinka were surrounded. Too many guards, too few allies. Merrick's voice rang again. Surrender now, Kai. Let her go, and I'll spare your family. His body trembled. He felt the fear rise. But then, he looked into Rinka's eyes, and the fear melted. Because what he saw there wasn't weakness. It was fire. Rinka stood tall, her body glowing with silver-blue light. Her wounds had healed. Her strength had returned. She reached for Kai's hand, and their marks pulsed together. Boom! A shockwave of light exploded from their bond, knocking back every guard in the room. Kai looked at her. Can we do that again? She smiled. Together. The unseen power. The bond wasn't just emotional. It was ancient, alien, alive. As they moved together, their bodies sparked with energy. Each step they took, the walls cracked. Each touch, the air hummed. They were no longer just a soldier and a prisoner. They were a pair made by fate, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The escape, or the beginning. They reached the command deck, fought through elite guards, faced off with Merrick herself. Kai hesitated, but Rinka didn't. She knocked the commander to the floor, looked into her eyes, and said, You call me a beast, but you are the real monster. Then they left the prison, hand in hand. Not just survivors, not just lifebenders, but a warning to all those who watched from afar. You can't cage love. You can't break fate. And you should never, ever chase a bond you don't understand. More than mates. The stars above Earth shimmered like broken glass. Below them, the Earth Command Prison Station burned slowly in orbit, pieces drifting like falling ash in space. But it was over. For now. Inside a stolen rebel ship, Kai sat beside Rinka, holding her hand. Her fingers were cold, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. The bond mark on her chest still glowed, but faintly, like a candle about to die. She had used everything in that final blast. The power of the bond, the fire of her people, her life force. And now, she was slipping. The pure sea of freedom. The ship floated in silence. The stars passed slowly outside the windows. The crew of rebel fighters worked in silence, giving Kai space. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. They could feel it too. The Queen of Beasts had saved them all. But at what cost? Kai sat there for hours, whispering her name. Rinka, please, stay with me. He pressed his forehead to hers. You promised you wouldn't leave again. Her eyes didn't open, but he felt a whisper inside his chest. I'm tired. I don't want to go, but the bond is fading. You must let me go. No, Kai said out loud. We didn't come all this way for goodbye. He looked around the ship, at the ancient healing tech the rebels had stolen from different corners of the galaxy, at the bond crystal still pulsing on the wall. And he had an idea. The sacrifice. Kai placed her gently on the healing platform, surrounded by blue light. He touched the control panel, but the screen blinked red. Power source too weak. One life form can be restored, but energy cost is high. A second message appeared. Warning. Bonded pair detected. Transfusion possible. Success not guaranteed. He didn't hesitate. He placed his hand over hers. I give it, he whispered. My strength, my fire, all of it. The crystal on the wall cracked. The bond mark on his chest turned white-hot, burning through his shirt, glowing like a star. Pain hit him like lightning. He screamed, but didn't stop, because her breath returned. First a gasp, then a cough, then her eyes slowly opened. Kai. He fell forward, weak, breathless, eyes barely open. "Hey, you're back." She sat up, panic in her voice. "What did you do?" He smiled faintly. "Gave you the rest of me." Rinka pressed her hands to his chest. "No, don't say that. Don't cry," he whispered. "It's okay. The bond is stronger now. I can feel you, even more." She held him close. "I won't lose you. Not now. Not ever. The fire that never dies." For hours she sat there, holding him, whispering songs from her world. Songs about love, loss, and light. The other rebels kept their distance, eyes full of respect. And then, something happened. Kai's mark flashed again. Not white, but gold. The bond didn't die. It evolved. Stronger, deeper, reborn. His eyes opened, weak, but alive. Still hers, still burning. "Looks like I'm hard to get rid of," he choked. She cried and laughed at the same time. "You stubborn human." He touched her cheek. "You saved me first." "No," she said. "We saved each other. Any do beginning." Weeks later, the galaxy had changed. The Earth Command had been exposed for its crimes. The bond between Kai and Rinka had been broadcast across thousands of systems. Not a weapon, not a threat. A miracle. Something sacred, ancient, beautiful. Humans called it the Fire Bond. Aliens called it Soulbind. But Rinka and Kai had their own name for it. Home. The final NESSAG. Kai stood at a podium made of crystal and vines. Rinka beside him, holding his hand. The camera drones hovered silently. Billions watched across the stars. Kai spoke softly. "I was taught to fear what I didn't understand. I was trained to kill what I couldn't control. But then I met Rinka." He paused. "She was called a beast, a monster. But what I saw was someone like me, lonely, scared, and tired of being used." He looked at her, eyes full of warmth. "She gave me her trust. I gave her my heart. We fought. We bled. We burned. And through it all, we held on." Rinka stepped forward. "Our bond is not a weapon. It is not a weakness. It is love. Real. Raw. Alive." She turned to the camera. "If a human and an alien can find peace in each other, then maybe this galaxy still has hope. Nor even mateys." On a small moon surrounded by pink skies and blue oceans, they built a home. Not a palace, not a base, just a simple place made of stone, wood, and love. There were no cages, no chains, only freedom. And in the evenings, they sat under the stars, hand in hand, eyes closed, their hearts speaking through silence. Not as soldier and queen, not as rebel and prisoner, but as life benders, as mates, as one, forever.